In the annals of history, there are figures whose actions are etched in infamy. Amon Goth, a high-ranking SS officer during World War II, was one such individual. His brutal reign of terror in the Plaszow concentration camp horrified the world. Today, we delve into the story of his capture and eventual execution, an event that marked a crucial moment in the pursuit of justice. Amon Goth, a sadistic and ruthless figure, commanded the Plaszow concentration camp in occupied Poland. His reign of terror was marked by unimaginable cruelty, where countless innocent lives were lost. Yet amidst the horror, stories of resilience and survival emerged. Survivors bore witness to the atrocities, ensuring that the world would never forget the horrors that transpired within those walls.
Born in December 11, 1908 in Vienna, Austria, Amon Leopold Goth hailed from a middle-class family. His father, Amon Franz Goth, was publisher, and his mother, Berta Schwendt Goth, was a housewife. Raised in an era of shifting political landscapes, young Goth would witness the rise of extremist ideologies and the seeds of hatred that would later blossom into unspeakable horrors.
As the Nazi Party gained momentum in Germany, Amon Goth was drawn to its extremist ideology. He joined the ranks of the SS, the notorious paramilitary organization that would later play a pivotal role in his life.
As World War II drew to a close, the Allied forces were determined to hold those responsible for war crimes accountable. The hunt for war criminals began, with Amon Goth at the top of the list. The Nuremberg trials were a turning point in history, establishing a framework for the prosecution of individuals responsible for crimes against humanity. Amon Goth was to face justice for his heinous acts,
whilst those not fit enough were murdered. Now, as the prisoners arrived at the camp, Goeth made a speech saying, "I am your God," and he wished to be worshipped like one. He did have overall authority, but his barbaric side had already been shown as he allegedly shot over 100 women and children himself during the liquidation of the Krakow ghetto. More prisoners were sent to Plaszow, and Amon Göth became known for random and barbaric acts of cruelty and murder. At his trial after the war, stories of horror came out. One witness testified that Goeth was approached by a Jewish lady whose fiancé was working in cleanup. She begged him to stay with him. He refused, and then Goeth ordered her to turn around, where he instantly shot her dead. She fell dead, and after then, he separated all of the people again. Another account stated how, "My sister Hella was in a group of women sitting, breaking tombstones into tiny pieces for building roads. Goeth appeared and then told an older woman she wasn't doing it right. He then showed her how to do it, and then shot the woman." An ex-prisoner of the camp stated he was a hideous and terrible monster. He set the fear of death in people, terrified masses, and accounted for much chattering teeth. He ran the camp through extremes of cruelty that are beyond the comprehension of a compassionate mind, employing tortures which dispatched victims to hell. For even the slightest ruling fraction, he would rain blow after blow upon the face of the helpless offender, and would observe with satisfaction born of sadism, how the cheek of his victim would swell and turn blue, how the teeth would fall out, and the eyes filled with tears. Anyone who was whipped by him was forced to count in a loud voice each stroke of the whip, and if he made a mistake, he was forced to. He set his dog on the accused, who was strung up by his legs from a hook in the ceiling. In the event of an escape from the camp, he would order the entire group from which the escapee had come from to form a row, would give the order to count to 10, and would then personally kill every 10th person. At one morning parade, in the presence of all the prisoners, he shot a Jew because he complained the man was too tall. Then, as the man lay dying, he urinated on him. Once Goeth even caught a boy who was sick with diarrhea and was unable to restrain himself, and then he forced the young boy to eat all the excrement and then shot him. It was clear he was a horrifically savage man, and the camp itself housed 2,000 when it opened, but at the peak of its operations, it oversaw 25,000 prisoners, and around 150,000 passed through it as it served as a transit camp. At the time, Goeth lived in a rather luxurious villa, where he would often sit on the balcony and shoot the prisoners with his rifle. If on his balcony, prisoners saw his hat, often they knew he would begin shooting, trying to pick off prisoners as if they were tin cans in a fair. He lived rather comfortably, and even had a Jewish cobbler who made him a new pair of shoes each week. He held lavish parties and indulged massively, drinking a huge amount and eating like a king. His site inside the camp was associated with death, and between 8,000 and 12,000 were murdered inside of his camp, with the main murder site being known as the Hegerwa Gurkha, where mass killings and murders took place. However, Amon Göth did fall from grace. He was sacked and charged with bringing the SS into disrepute after he was caught stealing Jewish property, which under Nazi law was property of the state. This occurred in September 1944, before months later the camp itself was closed as the Second World War came to an end. This did briefly benefit Göth too, as with the Nazis heading for defeat, his court case was never heard and his charges were dropped. He was later diagnosed as mentally ill and was placed in a Bavarian institution, however, was later arrested by the U.S. Army in May 1945 after wearing a Wehrmacht uniform. He initially did not admit to have worked in the SS, but in a temporary prison camp he was identified by a former prisoner. This only meant one thing. He was placed on trial and was then extradited to Poland, the country of his crimes, and was tried by Polish courts between the 27th August and the 5th September 1946. During this harrowing evidence came to fruition about the state of the camp and about Amon Göth's brutality, and there was little he could deny. For this he was found guilty of being a Nazi party member and having personally ordered torture, imprisonment, and extermination. He was convicted of murder for personally killing, maiming, and torturing an unidentified number of people and was sentenced to death. On the 13th September 1946, Amon Göth was taken out of his prison cell in a Krakow prison, not too far from the site of the concentration camp he oversaw. This prison in particular, Montelopich, would become synonymous with Nazi war criminals, but Amon Göth would be one of the very first. He was taken into the execution courtyard, and outside was just a stool with a hook and a rope hanging from a gallows. His identity was confirmed before his arms bound and he was led onto the stool. Surrounding him were a number of guards. The executioner then placed a noose around his neck, and at this point, the stool was kicked out from under him. A guard then pulled down on a rope, so he slowly strangled to death. Amon Göth was truly evil. He was a despicable human who, under the guise of the Second World War and the Holocaust, inflicted huge amounts of death and suffering onto innocent people. Inside the camp, when people saw him, they believed death was imminent, like the Grim Reaper. His brutality was shown in the film Schindler's List, and for his crimes, Amon Göth's execution was justified.
Milestone in the pursuit of justice for the victims of the Holocaust. It stands as a solemn reminder that even in the darkest moments of history, there is a commitment to ensure that the perpetrators of such atrocities are held accountable. Scene. Closing shot with text. In memory of the victims and survivors of the Holocaust. Narrator. Voiceover. May we never forget, and may we always strive for a world where justice and compassion prevail.